For years now, we have been feeling that our elections are rigged. The fake news is against us, the Justice Department, so many fake stories, the FBI. Today, I have a special guest to help me go through what's going on internationally and right here in the United States with rigging elections. To help me go through all this, I have Ralph Pizzullo. Ralph, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, Stephen. My pleasure.
This is a big topic, something that my audience is very interested in. Just some background. Ralph is a New York Times best-selling author. He's written about SEAL Team 6, Osama bin Laden, about cartels and the evil actors that are using American taxpayer dollars to fund stolen elections around the world, and now stolen elections right here in the United States. The book is Stolen Elections: The Takedown of Democracy. I don't know if you saw this, Ralph, but right before we're going on to record this, it's just come out that a leaked memo proves that the FBI had nearly 300 agents on the ground on January 6th.
Wow.
So January 6th happens because Americans are saying something feels off. How did Joe Biden win after losing 18 of the 19 bellwether states? How did Donald Trump win the night of the election, but then we all wake up to the election results being different? What are your thoughts on this, finding out that the very reason people went to question the election, now we're finding out hundreds of FBI agents in the crowd? Your thoughts on that?
Horrible. This story, it's an international conspiracy. And the upsetting part about it, Stephen, is that there was a lot of complicity in the United States within our institutions. A lot of people turned to the other side, joined the other side, and betrayed our country.
Wow. So I had Patrick Byrne on 30 to 40 days ago. He walked me through how they've been using our money against us, how they've been using software to rig our elections. Like, you are known for being a good investigative journalist, an excellent researcher. Somebody sat you down and for 4 hours walked you through how America is being attacked and rigged. Help me understand this story for my audience.
Okay, so about a year and a half ago, I was approached by through a friend of mine who was in the DEA. He said, "You've got to meet this man. He's the best source we've ever had. He's a brilliant guy." I met him for lunch, and he told me, I said, "What are you working on?" He's a Venezuelan gentleman. And I said, "What are you working on these days?" He said, "Election fraud." And I was like, of course, immediately my ears perked up, because as you said in your introduction, I've always been one of those people who felt that something was wrong, right? And in the way we conducted our elections and the strange results that were coming out that just didn't sort of feel right. And anyway, he said, "I want to show you, if you're not busy tomorrow, I want to show you a 4-hour presentation that I've put together of the research that me and my partner have done." And I watched this 4-hour PowerPoint presentation and was absolutely stunned. Clearly, these two whistleblowers had assembled like kind of a foolproof criminal case, and it involved Venezuela, Cuba, China, Serbia, a criminal cabal that was working against the United States, had developed software and developed a whole system to penetrate our country and steal our elections. And I've written a book about it now that just came out called Stolen Elections. I can take you through how it started.
Let me point out one thing to my audience.
Sure.
You mentioned Cuba and Venezuela and China. China just signed an agreement to take over all of the debt of Cuba with their Belt and Road Initiative. They're digging in with Venezuela and with Iran.
Yeah.
And now we find out that USAID money, our hard-earned taxpayer money, was being weaponized to flood the border with illegal immigrants, to rig elections for district attorneys. So walk me through what it is that you learned and wrote about.
Okay, so what happened was it started in 2004. Hugo Chavez, who had been elected president of Venezuela, and immediately started turning it in a very socialist direction, taking over companies, expropriating wealth, driving wealthy people out of the country. He was running he faced a referendum, and the polls showed that he was going to lose the referendum. The Cubans came to him, Cuban intelligence came to him and said, you're going to lose unless you steal the election. And he was like, well, how do I do that? And they said, well, there's a new technology that's come along. It involves electronic voting machines. And using software, you can manipulate the results. And they identified 3 engineers in Venezuela who were sort of experts in this field and they thought could help develop this software. Hugo Chavez said, okay, let's give it a try. These 3 engineers were successful. They developed software. They put it into Olivetti kind of calculating machines, and they rigged up sort of a primitive electronic voting machine system that worked. And Hugo Chavez narrowly won the referendum in Venezuela. He was so pleased, and as were his Cuban counterparts, that they said, let's invest in this system and see if we can expand it into other countries in Latin America, which Cuba had always been on a program to try to turn these countries more aligned with them and more aligned with sort of their socialist program. They invested $200 million, and they ended up winning a series of elections in Nicaragua, in Argentina, other countries. And then they said, well, let's introduce it to the United States. Let's see if we can, get past sort of the regulating agencies in the United States. And they founded a company called Smartmatic that was registered in Delaware. The same 3 Venezuelan engineers with the same basically soft source code, which is key because source code is sort of the DNA of any software program. And they started. They set themselves up as an legitimate election company, without revealing that their company, the ownership of their company, was really Venezuelan and the Venezuelan government. And they were caught by Carolyn Mahoney, who was a representative from New York. She pointed this out to the Treasury Department. And they were also caught in California, which did a sort of an audit of software that was going to be used in their elections. And they found out, they rejected it. They basically said, this thing has so many back doors, it's very suspicious, and they're not revealing really who the ownership of it, which turned out to be Venezuelan. But still, they were able to, they targeted like the key election districts in the United States. And through a kind of a corporate shell game, they moved their company from Smartmatic to another election company. They bought another election company called Sequoia. They were forced to sell Sequoia, but they sold Sequoia to another election company called Dominion. All right, that was a very small Canadian election company. And they made a deal where Smartmatic would run elections in other countries, except for the state of California. And Dominion would run elections in the key states in the United States. And so the first election that they ran in the U.S. was the Democratic primary in 2006 in Chicago, where Hillary Clinton was, everybody thought would win, but they were able to manipulate the result of the election, and Obama was the winner. And this was the event that sort of launched his campaign, because people felt like, wow, if this newly elected senator can win Chicago from Hillary Clinton, this guy really has a lot of momentum and public support. And that carried him to the nomination. And they have basically determined the winner of every election in the United States since 2006. Every presidential election, Senate elections, elections in the House of Representatives, and they've supported this system with massive amounts of money from China, with the help of the Open Societies Foundation. It's become this sort of massive international conspiracy, and and it continues to this day. So these whistleblowers, one was a former CIA operations officer, very highly awarded guy, and this named Gary Burnson, and this Venezuelan gentleman who I met, who was also a top DEA source. They combined. They decided to work together. And they were not looking into elections initially. They were looking for asset recovery. Okay, so money launderers, if you identify money, the drug dealers and money launderers have put into bank accounts that's illegal, money, you can file with the Treasury Department and try to recover those assets. And whatever percentage of those assets are recovered, you get a percentage of it. So they were working in Venezuela. In Venezuela, there's an organization called the Cartel del Soul. It's not well known, but it's basically the biggest multinational criminal organization in the world. Venezuela, a lot of people think of it, Venezuela, it's like a banana republic. It's very, primitive. That is not true at all. Venezuela has the highest oil reserves in the world. It's a very, very wealthy country. And since Hugo Chavez became president in 1999, he nationalized the oil industry, which is called PDVSA. So he had a huge amount of money to work with, right? And then he created this criminal organization called the Cartel del Soul, which is really run by the military of Venezuela. And today it controls all drug trafficking in the Western Hemisphere. So it controls everything from the growers in Bolivia to the labs in Colombia to the Sinaloa cartel and the Los Zetas and these other organizations in Mexico that smuggle drugs across the border. It's all run by the Cartel del Soul. And they make somewhere between $1 and $4 trillion a year profit. They're huge.
Wow. Whoa. That's a country.
That's massive. So they have tremendous power. And they have been able to use that money to, support election theft in now 72 countries around the world. And also to pay off and corrupt key officials in the United States in our foreign policy apparatus. And these people are now facing investigation and criminal charges. But the point is that they have been able to make huge inroads in our country, and also working with the Open Societies Foundations and George Soros, been able to fund a lot of the organizations that we see sort of eroding the underpinnings of our democracy, dividing us, staging protests and riots and so on and so forth. So this is a very big, serious, extremely nefarious, and that the object, because it's backed by Iran, China, Serbia's involved, Russia's involved to a certain extent. Really, they're all people who are enemies of the United States and are looking to subvert us from within.
The Fed has finally dropped interest rates, and that's great news for American homeowners. Expenses have been a major burden on families. Wages are flat, prices keep climbing, and for many, the only way to make ends meet is to lean on credit cards. But that cycle of high interest debt makes it hard to stay ahead. If you're a homeowner, I want you to call my friends at American Financing. Right now, interest rates have dropped, and many homeowners are seeing options in the low fives. Compare that to credit cards charging rates in the 20s or higher. There is an easy path to see how you can finally put your hard-earned equity to work for you. American Financing can help you pay off that expensive debt, free up your cash flow, and keep your budget under control. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are saving customers on average $800 a month. And if you get started today, you might be able to delay the next mortgage payment. Take control. Call American Financing today at 888-686-8030 or visit americanfinancing.net/Gardner. Again, that's 888-686-8030. Let me ask you a question, Ralph. I've noticed an uptick in activity from the Trump administration against Venezuela.
Yeah, that's
I've also noticed President Trump, he's throwing out Open Society and George Soros several times a week.
Yeah.
Is he signaling
Yes.
that something is going on, that he wants the DOJ or the FBI to be looking in certain directions?
Yes, they are engaged. I can't talk about that, but they have a lot of people who have looked at the information that these whistleblowers have uncovered. A lot more witnesses have come forward to corroborate what they found, and so this is like a very active investigation, and it also it's why there's so much focus on Venezuela right now by the Trump administration, and why there are warships like off the coast of Venezuela, because they are aware of the fact that they have basically been conducting, warfare, trying to undermine our democracy, and so this is a major thing, and people will be hearing more and more about it as time goes on.
Is this why Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has said in 2 different cabinet meetings, we are looking into the vulnerabilities of the election systems here in the United States?
Yeah, that's the reason. Yeah. So the DNI, which is Tulsi Gabbard's organization, the Justice Department, the White House, they've all been briefed on this information. They've all corroborated it. As I said, you know what the whistleblowers did. They're criminal investigators. So when they were doing this work in asset recovery, they were recruiting sources within Venezuela, within the criminal cartel in Venezuela, and the criminal and the sources that they were developing were pointing them to assets that were illegal assets from drug deals and so on and so forth. They also told them, like, hey, we know about the election fraud system as well. And these whistleblowers were like, what are you talking about? And they said, the Venezuelan regime has been controlling elections in the United States. So these whistleblowers were, they're patriots. They said, well, let's look into this. and they launched their own investigation. And what they did is they recruited sources within the criminal conspiracy. So they recruited engineers, and they ended up recruiting almost 20 of them, who had actually helped develop the source code, had helped develop the software, had been in the labs and the control rooms when they were monitoring and setting up the stealing of elections and actually doing it. So they were able to find out how this whole thing was run from top to bottom. And it was not just a few guys. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of engineers. You're talking about Iranian engineers, Chinese engineers, servers in Serbia that were run by China and owned by Huawei, massive servers, which is where they were manipulating the results. This is a huge criminal conspiracy.
You said we're going to be hearing a lot more of this.
Yes.
Are you anticipating that at some point the Trump White House or the U.S. intelligence is going to make some kind of move or some kind of announcement to the public?
Yes. There are investigations going on. There are people who have been subpoenaed. It's all being quiet right now, but at some point it's going to be. I mean, you're seeing sort of the tip of it with Trump declaring the Venezuelan regime a terrorist regime. The ships off the coast of Venezuela. The things that they've discovered that Venezuela has done with the help of China and Russia are absolutely shocking. And they're also investigating the collusion. Many, I shouldn't say many, but important key people in our intelligence community were compromised. They were working as agents for either Cuba or Venezuela or both. And those people are being investigated as well.
Okay. So tying it back to the first thing I talked about, you have millions of conservatives here in America. They're saying, man, something in my gut doesn't feel right. Like, I'm not seeing the Biden signs everywhere.
Right.
I'm like, he campaigned out of his basement.
Yeah.
Trump was already the president. It was a good economy. We were coming out of COVID. Almost everyone that I interacted with seemed like Trump was going to win. That's typically what happens unless a president is terrible. They usually get 8 years, not 4. The bellwether states, our counties are messed up. The states that usually indicate a president, that got all messed up. What happened with the 2020 election? Because President Trump seemed very adamant, and he has not backed down, that this election was taken. And now we find out, when the very American public goes to question the election, we've got the US FBI infiltrating the Capitol, saying, go in, cause damage, cause violence. Like, all of this seems very conspiratorial, but I believe there's there's connection. How was the 2020 election taken?
Well, it was a massive voter fraud conducted using key states, different methods. It's all kind of revealed in my book. This system was built with 14 back doors into it. So it was built. That's why it was rejected in California initially and other states, because when the experts looked at it, they were like, no, this is absolutely a corrupt system. But with the use of money and payoffs of key officials, they were able to sell it into different districts in the United States. And let me point out a few things which I think will support what you're saying, is that the whistleblowers, after the 2020 election, they presented their evidence to Giuliani and Sidney Powell. When Sidney Powell, and they told them, they said, look, our investigation is preliminary, but this is what we're finding. And this is what we've heard, that the 2020 election was stolen. but we can't prove it until we do the work. We do the investigation. We recruit more sources and studies and information. And Sidney Powell went ahead and announced, I'm going to reveal the Kraken. Okay, that's what this was. And they were kind of horrified. They were like, well, look, why are you saying this? We don't have the information yet. But they were in the president felt in his gut that the election had been stolen. There was a lot of, a lot of people felt that, and there was a great pressure on them to put this out, but they didn't have the evidence yet to back it up. Eventually, the Trump campaign, now listen to this is crazy. The Trump campaign hired the Berkeley Research Group to investigate the 2020 election. Well, the Berkeley Research Group was run by a gentleman who was a source of the Cubans, was a Cuban spy. So, of course, the report came out, oh, no, everything was finally, there was no corruption in the 2020 elections. The results were, fine, pristine, exact, no problem. This is the depth of corruption within the system. These people were able to, corrupt so many officials, so many people within Washington, within these groups. Now, when the whistleblowers had gathered their evidence and they went to the FBI basically told them, go hide, basically. They tried to show their evidence. They showed their evidence to many members of Congress. They showed it to the officials in the intelligence community, and they got the same response. Like, you guys, you better hire lawyers. Your lives are in danger. So, what has happened here is really a terrible thing. Part of the reason is that, after 9/11, all the attention of our intelligence community really shifted to the Middle East, and Latin America was sort of ignored. And it gave the Venezuelans and the Cubans sort of an open field to operate.
Yeah, I mean, look what China did while we were focused on the Middle East. They basically came in and corporate captured the Panama Canal. Until Trump stepped in and was like, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. This is not a Chinese asset. This is an American asset that we donated. I want to pull this up on the screen. This came out last night. This is a top lawyer in the the Trump administration, Harmeet Dillon. She's put out a warning to California, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania, because they are refusing to clean up their voter rolls. They've got millions and millions of dead people, fake people, illegal immigrants, people that have moved, but they keep them all so that they can print millions and millions of additional ballots. And now she's put out, just last night, states are required to safeguard American elections by complying with our federal election laws. Clean voter rolls protect American citizens from voting fraud and abuse and restore their confidence that their state elections are conducted properly, with integrity, and in compliance with the law. So is part of this system having large amounts of fake names in the American voters so that they can use those like chess pieces where they need them?
So what happens is when an election company like Smartmatic or Dominion, or there are a bunch of other ones, when they get the contract to run elections in a particular voting district in the United States, and there are 300 of them, they take over the whole administration of the election. And part of that are the poll books. The poll books are key because they show you, who the voters are. Are they dead or alive? Who they voted for in the past, and so on. So a lot of the people who were being employed by the Venezuelans who were being employed by these companies were statisticians, were people who were looking through the polling data. And they told me, and they told the whistleblowers that, an election steal is prepared a year ahead of time. They start working on it. And they start deciding, okay, how are we going to do this? And they do it very scientifically because the whole idea is that we don't want to get caught. We don't want to make it point to any particular aspect. Like I said, there's 14 back doors. So they manipulate the poll data. They have all different techniques that they use, and it's very sophisticated. These are experts, and they study it. They modify their techniques all the time, and you're talking about hundreds of engineers and statisticians.
Wow. Let me put something up on the screen here. This is from the Federalist. This is really well done and researched. This was after the 2020 election. 5 more ways Joe Biden magically outperformed election norms. So by almost every measure, he should not have won. And they walk you through all of the different ways that he should have lost. 80 million votes. Well, where did those votes go for Kamala Harris, right?
Yeah.
Winning despite losing most bellwether counties. So these indicator counties where he lost, that Obama won, that Trump won, those all should have indicated Donald Trump as the winner, and yet they didn't. Yeah. Biden won despite Democrat losses everywhere else. So the down ticket didn't go towards Democrats, but somehow Biden won, and then Biden overcame Trump's commanding primary vote. I mean, this guy was basically campaigning from his basement. Donald Trump did hundreds of in-person campaign rallies, and then yet magically lost at the very last second. I mean, this is such a scam.
It was such a scam on a huge scale, and they tried to repeat it in 2024, and it was blocked. I mean, they were trying to steal the election for Kamala Harris.
So this idea of too big to rig, actually, that is what carried Donald Trump in 2024?
No, they tried to steal it for her, but they were blocked. The servers were actually, I can't get into all the details, but they were blocked.
Okay, and you're saying from earlier that people within the Justice Department, they have been, or FBI or Intel, they have been briefed on this information?
Yes, they have. Yeah.
Okay.
There are active investigations with hundreds of agents involved in investigating. They've deposed all the engineers that were recruited by the whistleblowers. There have been other very high level Venezuelan officials who were part of this criminal conspiracy who are cooperating with the Justice Department. The official, one of the founders of Smartmatic was arrested, is in custody in Florida, and he's talking to investigators. This is all collapsing in on them, but it hasn't become public yet, and it will within, I don't know the time, the time frame, but it will soon.
Well, I mean, look at what happened just in the last couple of days, right? So we've been hearing from Alex Jones and others saying, oh, former FBI director James Comey, he's going to be indicted. We're going to see him arrested, and he's going to have a trial. And then it was like, no, nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden, MSNBC is like, we're getting word that he's going to be indicted and arrested before the weekend. And then as we went into the weekend, Ralph, boom, he's arrested, he's indicted. He's going to be arraigned soon. I don't know what the outcome of that will be, but what it kind of speaks to what you're saying is like all of this is going on behind the scenes, and then all of a sudden, boom, it just hits the airwaves.
Right, right. That's what's happening. It's been frustrating to watch, but the justice. So when you, like I said, the whistleblowers, they gathered all the information, they gathered all the sources, they corroborated it many times. But then when you turn it over to the Justice Department and the FBI, they have to do their own independent investigation. So they have to re-interview all the witnesses. They have to go through all the testimony. They have to, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but they've seized voting machines and they've done forensic analysis and seen, that these machines are built in China. They are shipped to Taiwan, where they put a label on them that says made in Taiwan, but they're really made in China. That they're loaded with this software that is all corrupted. The machines are corrupted, and they have done forensic. That's part of what they investigate. They tear apart the machines. They bring in experts. They look at everything. They corroborate everything. So it's a frustratingly slow process, but it is it's ongoing and it's gaining momentum, and I think people will start seeing results. You've already heard Elon Musk and Trump, President Trump, and others talking about how we have to get back to paper ballots with signatures, and that's kind of what the end result of all this is going to be. Because really, when you talk to the experts and the engineers, there is no way to develop a software system of conducting electronic voting that is completely safe. It's almost impossible to do that.
Okay. Yeah. And I've heard General Michael Flynn calling on that. I just did a quick Google
search. He's a big part of this. General
Flynn
has been a big supporter and a big help
okay.
in terms of all of this. Yeah.
Ralph, I just did a quick Google search. First thing that comes up, Smartmatic executive indicted for allegedly bribing Philippine officials.
Yeah.
Goes on to say that two of them were brought in. If people want to look into
Roger Piñate is one of the three founders of Smartmatic that I talked about before. He was one of the three guys that was brought in by President Chavez and asked, can you design a software system? Now, this particular investigation has gone beyond the Philippines, but I can't really talk about that either.
Okay. Well, I just wanted my audience to see. If you do a quick search of Smartmatic and arrests, you start seeing stuff come up. Tell me the name of the
American people that this is serious, that this is that the Trump administration has deeply engaged in this, and the results will come out. And it is a criminal conspiracy of foreign actors. So these are people who are trying to undermine the United States, and they've been getting a lot of help. They've been getting a lot of help from the Soros foundations, and we even discovered in the USAID budget there were billions of dollars that were being sent through different NGOs to an organization called CEPS that was basically marketing this software to other countries overseas. So the U.S. taxpayers was subsidizing the marketing of Smartmatic software to other countries with the help of USAID and U.S. embassies, and other countries were almost their arms were being twisted to adapt this software. And some of them came back, including the president of the state of Georgia. After they had a referendum there, she said, well, this is weird. It didn't go the way we expected at all. And she was actually in contact with the whistleblowers, and they were basically telling her, you're correct. Your referendum was stolen, and how it was stolen.
Unbelievable. Well, I look forward to having this information come out. I got to tell you, Ralph, this time last year, before the election, right? Your book was supposed to come out. I bet you the majority of Americans would have said, this is science fiction. This is like, I wouldn't believe it, right? But once Elon Musk and Doge started cracking open USAID, and you started seeing the rats scatter, and they started showing us where all the money was going, and then you start realizing that George Soros puts up $1 million and then gets Congress to give him billions of dollars, and then he uses that to bring in millions of illegal immigrants, and all of like all of the pieces are starting to fall into place to realize we've been living in a corrupted system. They're stealing our money. They're rigging our elections. They're abusing us. I'm just excited that there's sunlight finally being shown in the shadows where these guys have been operating.
Yeah. No, well, this is very true, Stephen. And the money was coming from Venezuela. The money for a lot of the Soros projects was coming from Venezuela, because they have so much wealth and they make so much money in drug trafficking. And that's why, the Trump administration is sort of first thing they're attacking is sort of the source of the money. They want to get rid of the Maduro regime, which should happen soon, and cut off this pipeline of billions and billions of dollars that are using to corrupt the United States. Another thing that the whistleblowers found out was they're the ones who revealed all the information about Tren de la Aragua. Like, Tren de la Aragua was not just a social club. These were guys who were trained. They were operatives who were trained in camps in Venezuela, and they were sent into the United States to just cause chaos, assassinate people, take over neighborhoods, engage in human trafficking and drug trafficking. And those are the top people. Those were the initial people that ICE was going after. They had a list of over 20,000 names. They were all members of Tren de la Aragua. And a lot of people in the press made it out to be, oh, they're not that dangerous. They're, kind of a club that, a gang. No, this isn't a gang. This is an organized group to infiltrate the United States. And a lot of what was going on at the border was controlled by the Cartel del Soul. So it was an attack on our country. And it wasn't, people get all caught up in politics, and politicians on both sides and officials on both sides were corrupted. But really, it was an attack by foreign actors, including Cuba, Venezuela, Serbia, Iran, China, and Russia, to undermine the United States. And if you look at the state of our society and the trust in our institutions and government, you see the signs of that. And we're all wondering, like, well, where did all this come from? Well, it was an organized campaign against us. And our intelligence community and FBI was so corrupted and so distracted by what was going on in the Middle East that they didn't diagnose it. And it took two whistleblowers who weren't even looking for this to stumble across it. They're really the heroes, these two gentlemen.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we get to know their names one day. Ralph, thank you so much for all that you're doing. I know that this book took a lot of research. I know Patrick Byrne, Gary, you guys have put a lot on the line to bring this information to the American public. I'm grateful the Trump administration is taking this seriously.
These guys, Gary Burnson and Martin Rodil, they did this on their own. They funded it on their own. And they got a lot of help and support from Patrick Byrne. He's also a key player and hero in this whole story. I want to give him his credit.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, I want to give you your credit. The book is out. People can get a copy of it. Stolen Elections, The Takedown of Democracies. I'm going to put a direct link down below so that people can get that. If people want to follow you online, where's the best place for me to point them?
They can follow me. My website is ralphpizzuloauthor.com. That's probably the best place.
Okay. I'll go ahead and do that, as well as a direct link to the book. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for all you do, and it's been a pleasure.